Hey everybody, hope you're doing well today. Thanks for joining me again. It's day 84 of Take a Journey with Me. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm going to speak about Potiphar's wife today. The chapter that I've been reading for this lesson was written about Dinah and Potiphar's wife, but I feel that they each deserve their own day. There's enough information, and there's a lot to be learned from each of them. I go by this book, Women in the Bible, Examples to Live by Sylvia Charles, as I've been mentioning, but I also glean from other resources and bring in my own life and other examples. So just topical information from them to get kind of me in the right direction. But I really feel Potiphar's wife and Dinah both deserve a special day for one another, for themselves. So, like I did yesterday, first off, I'm going to start by reading the passage, and then I will go in and talking more about what we've read and so forth. So, the book of Genesis, again, chapter 39. I'm going to specifically read verses 6 through 20. Now, Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come and be with me." But he refused. "With me in charge," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns he has entrusted into my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go and be with her or even spend quiet time. One day he went into the house to attend his duties. None of the household servants were inside. She called him by his cloak and said, "Come be with me." But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called her household servants. "Look," she said to them, "this Hebrew has brought to us to make sport of us. He came in here to be with me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." She kept his cloak beside her until his master came home. Then she told him this story. "That Hebrew slave you brought us came to me to make sport of me. But as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." When his master heard the story, his wife told him, saying, "This is how your slave treated me." He burned with anger. Joseph's master took him in and put him in the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. Thanks be to God. And if you know the story, Joseph later comes out of prison and things were made right. So please go read the whole book, the whole chapter of Genesis 39 in the book of Genesis. Wives of many leaders during Bible times were unfortunately not the only women who received attention from their husbands. Many of these women had husbands who were connected to multiple wives and or concubines. Not getting the full attention of your husband, especially if you were the first of the wives, had to be very challenging. Challenging to feel completed, truly loved, lonely, and more. I am by no means justifying the actions of Potiphar's wife here. By no means. Not even in the least. However, I am sharing the background for the life of many women then. Especially not being a believer of God, I'm sure this was a situation many would have easily found themselves in, having feelings towards being in. Can you fathom being with someone with multiple wives today? Would you feel incomplete and tempted to act out? We're not privy here to the past or upbringing of Potiphar's wife, and the details as this are really not necessary for the Bible to go into for us to gain the message that we are reading here. She did not only sin by actions regarding lust, But she also sinned by lying multiple times. In order to cover up one's sins, it is easy to lie, to cover it up, and or to make ourselves feel justified. You can wonder if Potiphar's wife had nights where she could not sleep well due to guilt of her actions, leading Joseph to be into prison. Not all lies are blatant. Many also include sins of omission. And we may think the little white lies here and there are justified. We are all guilty of these. This is why we need to stay in continual prayer, devotion to God, and reading His Word. I would like to think she had some sort of a conscience. However, not being a follower of God, it may not have been something natural or as it should have been. Do you have a heavy conscience of guilt when doing wrong? If not, are you sure you're walking with God? You don't want a hardened heart. She may not have even realized she was doing something wrong by living and living the way she was, by lying as she did, or tempting Joseph as she did, and trying to make him agree to her desires. If she was not a believer, she didn't understand this probably. I pray your heart is not so hardened that you do not feel guilty or an alert in your conscience when you are doing something wrong. Please reach out to God today to ensure you are saved if you do not feel something deep within your soul when you're doing something wrong. I know when I was lost and acting out, my heart was not hardened, but I was confused and numb. And to me, that was very similar because I just didn't see what I was doing. I cried out to God every night, but I didn't completely understand everything I was doing. As a summary from today about Potiphar's wife and about Dinah from yesterday, we learned about the sins of the flesh as well about lying. The world we're living in today makes these acts seem as normal, where right is wrong and wrong is right. The leaders of today either want to normalize sin or treat sin as a sickness which can be treated and be fixed. Neither is good or correct. The only way is to ask God for forgiveness. Stay in prayer every day and throughout the day. We are all inundated with tempting information and even brainwashing approval for sinful acts. So we need to actually be inundating ourselves and our loved ones with the truth of God and by God. Do you think Dinah and Potiphar's wife learned from their sins? Do you think either of them changed their ways? Knowing the positions in the life that both were in, one, the wife of a king, basically, and the other one not in that same status or level, but one was a faith believer and the other was most likely not. Um, One, to me, this makes it more interesting, and two, it makes more sense by their actions because one was hurt by somebody else because of her naivety, and the other one did some hurt to someone else because she didn't have a conscience. Have you ever learned from your sins? Have you learned from your sins, the past and daily, and think maybe I won't do those again, or you still do them again, but maybe you learned enough and then you don't do it again. And it's not an overnight process for some of these things that we're kind of used to doing, unfortunately. I've learned much from my sins over my lifetime. And asking God to show me daily where I fall short is something I aim to be better at myself. Again, I say it a million times. We're in this flesh, and I've said also about putting on the armor of God, praying and staying in devotion and reading the Bible, meditating on His Word, and so forth. It's the only way we can get by, not just on Sundays or in Wednesdays in the morning, evening, but daily and throughout the day, daily. So I think it's very interesting to learn about the two different women here, the two statuses in their lives and the positions, how they were living and where they were living, and one a believer and not a believer. But sins of the flesh are still sins of the flesh, and then lying as well. But we're all capable of being forgiven by God if we just ask Him to forgive us, and can be redeemed and change our lives. And I know I came a long way. I don't even recognize the girl was. And I hope this can help you see yourself as well, or those around you that maybe you could be a positive influence for. I will talk to you again tomorrow, and we'll see what I talk about then. Take care. God bless. Love y'all.